Welcome to Hex and Harmony. Today we are talking about baneful magic, hexing, cursing, jinxing, binding, these kinds of things that we typically, some people don't want to talk about in the magical community, but others do, which we'll get into that too in a few minutes. But first, I want to start off by talking about what these terms mean, because sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they don't have the same exact meaning. So, like, hexing is a term that I particularly relate to the Pennsylvania Dutch community because I live and work in Pennsylvania Dutch region. I'm surrounded by this culture, and so hexing comes from that in my mind and in the minds of a lot of people. And actually, the word hex originates from the German word hexen, Hexen, which means witchcraft. So a hex is a spell or a charm that brings misfortune or harm to somebody. And a curse is a broad term for wishing harm or misfortune on someone. So you would say that a hex is a curse, but not necessarily is a curse a hex. Because there's also jinxes, which, for me anyway, implies that a person or an object is destined for misfortune or negative luck. So, like, if you jinx something, then it's going to have a negative outcome because of that jinx, which is not necessarily the same as a hex. And then binding is something that is done to restrict or prevent movement or action, and it can be used to stop somebody from doing something. So it could be used in terms of hexing somebody to stop them from doing something by doing something else, or it can be used to stop a hex. So that, I know that can kind of get confusing because it's like, well, isn't that really all the same? Yes and no. And that,
It's go
it,
ahead.
it's like different words that have slightly different meanings depending on who you are and how you use them. So before I just go on and word vomit all over this episode, I'm going to shut my trap for a few minutes and let the other two people in this with me have their turn. And I'm sure we're all just going to be interchanging here and talking. So that's it for me for the moment.
Okay, I will just say, for me, I mean, we're talking about definitions right now. For me, the difference are kind of in a matter of degree and specificity. Like a jinx is just general bad luck, wishing or, doing a spell for just general bad luck on a person. I mean, it could be something really simple, like they trip all the time, or they bump into things all the time, or, they spill their coffee every day, or, just a
Exactly.
general bad luck jinx. While a curse is at the other end of the spectrum. Well, I don't know. See,
See?
like I said, they're interchangeable. I'm thinking between a hex and a curse. I think a curse would be at the other end of the spectrum where you are seriously, doing some serious spell work and cursing someone specifically with a specific curse. May, what is that old Arabian thing? May your belly button be full of the sand of 1,000 deserts, or whatever. It's a very specific curse. And I think a hex is kind of between those two, where you can hex someone that is something more specific and maybe lasting, but not quite like a, curse of death or, whatever. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
to me, in my mind, a curse is something that's like super, like death or whatever, some really,
Yeah.
really, really bad
Yeah.
thing that's going to
Really,
be
really
really
serious.
long lasting thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. A curse, to me, a curse is like really, really specific and really, really serious.
Mhm.
Like, I think it would be much harder to lift a curse than it would be to break a hex or, avoid a jinx. If someone, I think a jinx would be the easiest thing to get out of, because to me, a jinx is kind of not necessarily playful, but, just one of these things, make him clumsy,
Yeah, something
make
like
her,
trickster energy kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, agreed, exactly.
Yeah, I agree mostly. Um, I would just include, like you said, jinxes are, not jokes, but they're not as intense. And to me, they're not something that would last long. Like somebody bothered you and want them to be in the bathroom all day long, something like that. But it's like a one-time thing, or shorter time frame. Whereas a hex to me is uh, more intentional. Somebody did something that warranted a return on what may have been sent to you, and it may not last as long. But depending on, excuse me, the severity of the hex, it might take some work to get rid of. Whereas a curse is very intentional, and
Yes.
for me, you usually have to either be very skilled, or you have to go back to the person who dealt it in order to get it removed. It's not something that's easily taken care of, and people without a lot of wisdom in that area are not just going to be able to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think a curse that would take more than just, burning a candle and taking like a cleansing bath to get rid of it. I think it would take a lot more,
Uh,
like Bailey said, to get rid of it. You need to find somebody who knows what they're doing. I mean, I think a curse is very, very serious.
yeah,
Whereas a jinx is something that you can kind of accidentally stumble into. It's like giving somebody the evil eye and putting a
yeah,
jinx on them.
Yeah. And then a hex would be in between those, depending on what the hex is and who placed the hex would
hmm,
determine what was required to remove it.
right,
Right, right. And a hex, I think a hex is something you could try if you're aware of it. There are things you could do to break a hex on you with energy, energy and cleansing and, simple things like that, that you could get rid of a hex if someone had hexed you with something. Like, I have a friend who seriously, for a while, thought that somebody had hexed him
hmm,
for financial reasons, because one after the other things just kept going wrong. And I thought, well, it could be a hex. I don't think I mean, it could have been a curse. I don't know. But I think a hex you could kind of get out from under if you knew what you were doing. Whereas a
yeah,
curse is going to be, I mean, a curse is something that like follows you through generations of your through your
right,
progeny. Like, you're born with your family's cursed, and
right,
it's something that's really permanent unless you really find some way to get out from under it. I think it's really serious. And I think it's also harmful to the person who causes it, who makes the curse. I think that, they're going to suffer in some way too. There's going to be blowback from a curse.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about. Why is baneful magic so heated in the magical community? Like, there are people who are like, witches don't do that, or they're like, so some witches do it, and then they talk about black magic and white magic, which I hate and I despise that, because magic is just magic. There is no colored
Yeah.
trees or anything, and to me that just gets into like imagery that deals with racism and things, and it's like there is no bad or good, white or black, whatever, when it comes to energy and magic. It's just intention of what you have with it. So let's talk about that, if somebody wants to go into that before I again word vomit everything. Because this is something that I get really into talking about, and I just don't want to dominate the whole conversation.
Well, we want to hear what you have to say.
Oh, I will share, but I don't want to take up so much time that y'all don't get to share too, because I want to hear what y'all have to say.
Well, go ahead, Bailey. You go first this time.
Okay. Well, I'll say this. As far as it's like this thing, I think it's being unrealistic to say that we should not do these things, because things happen. And to walk around like everything is unicorns and bunnies is just not real. I mean, stuff
Thank
happens.
you.
People, especially if somebody's coming for you, somebody trying to hex you, somebody trying to, they, you might want to take the high road and be like, okay, I'm just going to protect myself. But at a certain point in time, if they're still coming for you, then you are well within your rights to return the favor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think it's realistic to say that and to say that witches don't do that. That's just not real. That's insanity. Witches do. We do.
Exactly.
So
Maybe not
we'll
all
start with
witches.
that. Right.
Not all
Right.
witches, but some witches do. And there are
Right.
times and places where baneful magic comes into play, and you have every right and every whatever, where you're well within your whatever you want to call it, to protect yourself beyond just putting up a boundary, because that
Right.
can only go so far depending on what somebody's doing. If somebody keeps coming at you and keeps coming at you and keeps coming at you, well, guess
Yep.
what? I'm only going to take it for so long before I'm going to throw that crap back at you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Before you stop them,
Exactly.
I mean, protection is, everybody should have their barriers and have their protections. We've talked about that, but there comes a point when you have to do what you have to do to stop them if someone's coming after you with
Absolutely.
baneful magic. And no, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you know what you're doing, because these things can be dangerous, like I said before, for the people
Right.
even conjuring them. They can be dangerous, so know what you're doing.
And if
Right.
people are doing things that harm society as a whole, we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to others, to do what we can to stop that.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
and that's all I'm going to say about that part of it. Because I'm trying really hard to rein myself in right now.
I can hear it.
I'm trying
I
really
can
hard
hear you
to
pumping the
rein
brakes
myself in
right
right now.
now.
Yeah. Right
And I
now
think
we'll
most
be putting
people
out
who
some
are listening
energy.
to this will know what I'm talking about. But we have
Yes.
this responsibility to, I mean, we have this, we've been given power. We've been given whatever you want to call it. We have a responsibility to use that for good. But
Right.
using it for good does not mean that we don't cause harm if that's necessary.
Right.
Because there are times when it's necessary.
I agree with everything you're saying. The only thing that gives me pause is, and God, I don't want to turn this into that kind of podcast, but the problem is, I mean, when you're talking about people that are causing harm to society and you have to, I'm just worried because there are people in society who think it's not such a bad thing. And I'm on your side, and you know that.
Yeah, there are like the things I'm
112%.
doing right now. I am not doing curses or hexes against specific people, but
Mhm.
I am doing things and workings to strengthen what they are trying to attack.
That's
Right.
excellent. That's an
Absolutely.
excellent way to
That's
And
how
go.
we
the
have to do it.
energy that they are putting into attack things, sending it back to them.
Yes.
But
And
Yeah.
but I'm not specifically doing workings against those people.
yeah, and I would even go far as to say some binding is not a bad idea, to
Exactly.
bind those people and try to bind their power and their influence over other people who are obviously too stupid to take care of themselves. I mean, but see, that's my opinion and that's your opinion. But there are other people who think that what they're feeling is just as justified as what we're feeling. And that's when it starts getting really, really difficult, you
And let's
know?
be honest, these people that are doing these things in society right now that are attacking, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to say, that are attacking the way life is to take it to a
Mm-hmm.
different way of life being. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they are well aware of curses. They are well aware of hexes, and they are protecting themselves.
Yep.
They
Yes.
know if we're doing things, if we're cursing them or if we're hexing them, they have protections in place against that that come back at us. They have the magic in place to send that back to us, whether they call it magic or not.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, they're cursing. Okay. Let me back up. They're hexing us as well.
exactly.
I
So I'm
mean, you
not going to
think,
waste my time sending a hex to somebody who's well aware that that there are people doing that and sending it back. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste my energy. I'm not going to waste my magic on that. I'm going to do magic to strengthen what they're attacking that I hold dear.
yes.
That's what I'm
Right.
doing.
Yeah. And that's defensive magic. I mean, you know, it's strengthening the walls and strengthening the established norms that you're used to in order to fend off an attack. I mean,
And
that's defensive magic.
just because I think we would be justified in hexing these people doesn't mean I think it's a smart thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are other people that I might think that I'm well within my rights to hex, that it would be a smart thing to hex them, depending on who it is and what it is. But in terms of what we're talking about, and everybody knows what we're talking about. I mean, we're not
Yep.
saying it, but everybody knows what we're talking about and who we're talking
Absolutely.
about. So let's be honest with that. Everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yep.
So I'm not going to do a hex on that or against that person or that person's people, but I might do one against somebody else who's doing something to me too. But that doesn't mean that I'm
Right.
just sit back and let that person do what that person wants to do and erode everything that I hold dear, because I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So just because I'm within my rights to do it and can do it doesn't mean I'm going to do it or that I should do it. There are different times and places for it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Absolutely.
So are you glad I word vomited? Did you want to hear it?
Yes, I mean, whenever you are being personally attacked, and I'm not saying that they said, oh, let's go get Michelle, but, when it's affecting your life directly and your circumstances directly, you are justified
Exactly.
in what you want to do. As far as saying, oh, I don't believe this is right for society, so I'm going to take a stand. I mean, everybody should fight for what they believe in, 100%, but everybody can't decide what's right for other people. I guess that's where I'm like vacillating on it, because if we want freedom for everybody
Exactly.
and, the pursuit of happiness for everybody, we can't decide what that looks like for everybody. And I think that's what some people are trying to do. And that's why we feel so attacked.
It's like, just let me live my life the way I want to live my life. And
Yes.
I mean, you live your life the way you want to live your life. I don't care what you do. Why do you care so much what I do? Not you personally, but
No, I know I know what you're
but why
saying.
do people care how we live our lives or how anybody lives their lives? If my life does not impact you. If you're not in my bed, in my house, in my bills, or whatever, then how I live doesn't matter to you. It doesn't affect you. So why do you care what I do or try to regulate what I do or who I do it with or not?
Control.
Thank you. Control.
Control.
Okay.
Absolute, unadulterated control.
All right. Moving along because we could go on and on about that. Ain't no doubt about it.
Right. Yep.
So let's talk about our different traditions and what we do or don't do specifically in terms of like our cultural heritage because I'm interested, Tegan, to hear about the like Welsh forms of cursing or whatever, if you're aware of any, since you practice more of that. I would like to hear about that.
I don't know if I can really speak to the whole Welsh tradition,
Maybe not the whole thing, but
but
anything you're aware of or that you do.
yeah, because things like hexes and curses, like you mentioned before, they're not openly discussed
Right.
very much. So I think it's more of a personal decision and a personal choice. And I think it's like we had talked about later, when someone is coming after you and coming after you, at some point, you have to fight back. I mean, turning the other cheek really is not how to survive. And so at some point, it's okay to fight back as long as you're aware of the consequences and as long as you're aware of your doing, because magic very rarely happens the way you imagine that it's going to happen. You can have the fullest intentions and the strongest intentions, but it will manifest in a different way than you expected. And that's very difficult. I mean, you can't plan for that. It's going to happen. It will rebound back on you. It could, if you're trying to curse somebody or hex somebody or jinx somebody, you know, maybe that person will suffer, but maybe they're suffering because of something you never, never, never intended. Like someone close to them is sick or hurt, or, the Twin Towers blew up, and, I mean, you know, you never know how it's going to manifest. I don't think even the best witch in the whole world can plan how it's going to manifest if the energy decides to go a different way.
Exactly.
So, I mean, one thing that I have found also that I guess I should say is if I have ever tried to do magic, um, when I'm very, very upset, when I'm feeling desperate or trapped or just not mentally stable for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. I mean, one of the tenets of magic, you have to be able to quiet your mind and connect with the energy and direct the energy. And if you're just desperate and grasping at the time, for me anyway, it's never worked. I mean, nothing's happened. Nothing at all. So you want to make sure that you know your intentions. You have to find a way to step into that magical space, between the realms in your own, out of space, out of time, to quote Charmed. You have to step into that magical space and you have to quiet yourself and quiet your mind and draw in your energy and draw in your strength and have a steady hand. Even if it's because someone is coming at you and you've exhausted all your other resources and you're going to have to resort to magic and some kind of hex or something. You have to come at it from a very steady and very focused place. And hopefully, once you get in that place, you will be able to think logically about what you're doing and decide whether or not you should be doing it. Because just getting pissed off and throwing together some hex or some curse, something might happen that you did not intend, or nothing might happen at all. And that's what's always been my experience. I mean, I have several examples I could give of just being in that place where you feel desperate or just so, 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 so mad or hurt or whatever, and just trying to throw something out there. And for me, it just never worked. And I don't know if it's because deep down subconsciously, the rational part of me knew that I shouldn't be doing this. And somehow I sabotaged myself. I don't know what it was, but it's never worked.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Bailey, do you have any specific traditions in your traditions that talk about cursing or ways to do it, hexing or anything like that?
Just what I already said. It's well within your rights to protect yourself, defend yourself, and send back if need be. Um, but like Tegan just said, you have to be in the proper mind space to do that if you so choose. Because, like you said, you don't want, some mishap to happen. Stories of, somebody will say, they want such and such to happen, but that goes into limiters and things like that. So to prevent certain things from happening, just in case if you don't put certain limits on what you are doing, then, you say you want this to happen, but what happens to this person that you're trying to deal with comes as a result of something happening to somebody that you cared of because you were in the wrong state of mind when you attempted to do what you were doing. So you have to be careful, make sure you're in the proper mind space and make sure that you are putting the proper precautions in place if necessary. And like Taylor said, you got to stand up and take responsibility if that's what you're going to do, you know, and, pull up your big girl panties and take responsibility for that if that's what you're going to do. Um, I feel it's okay. All this, the bunnies and unicorns and rainbows, that's not real life.
Yeah, that gets into toxic positivity crap, and I'm like, no,
Yeah, that too.
life is not all sunshine and rainbows, and
No,
there is a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of hate out in the world, and we can't ignore it.
right,
And just going around all smelling the flowers and everything, that's all well and good, but that's not real life. It's not like that all the time. And there
right,
are times that we have to do things or we need to do things to change a course of action or whatever. But like you
right.
said, you have to take responsibility for it and you have to put on your big girl panties. You have to say, this is what I believe I need to do and own it.
Hmm.
And
Yep,
don't half-ass it. If you're going to start it, you got to finish it,
right,
whatever, because you can't leave it half done. I mean,
right,
there is a price to pay. It's like
right.
any magical working you do, there's a price to pay. So if you decide that you're going to hex or curse somebody, you better know that you know that you know that you know that you're willing to pay the price that comes along with that, because there will be something that you have to do
Hmm.
in order for that to
Exactly.
happen. And
Right.
I mean, there are out there things. I mean, there's even a Jewish death curse out there. I'm not ever going to do it. I'm
Right.
not going to sit here and do any kind of thing to cause somebody to die. Not purposefully, anyway. I mean, God forbid I ever not purposefully do something that causes a person to die, but I'm certainly not going to go out there and choose to do a working that is going to end in somebody's death, that I
Right.
know will end in somebody's death. I'm not going to do that. But I'm not
Right.
going to sit here and say that I'm going to condemn somebody else for doing it. I mean, if somebody honestly believes that that's what they need to do, it's not for me to judge how they got
Do
to
what
that
they do.
decision or whatever. That's on
Yep.
them. They have to pay the price that comes with that. I'm
Yep.
not going to do that. But there is, like, there are traditions out there, like people think of things like these different groups aren't going to do something that's going to cause somebody to die. Yeah, sometimes they do. Sometimes
Yep.
they do. There are valid reasons sometimes, whether you think it's valid or not. That's not for you to say. Every person has to decide for themselves when it's justified and what price they're willing to pay to do it.
Hmm. Right.
So for me personally, I'm not ever going to choose to do a curse that's going to result in somebody's death. But again, somebody else may do it, and that's on them. That's not on me.
Yep.
But for me personally, what I do is more protection stuff to start with, and then
Hmm.
I'll do like, okay, so like if somebody's doing something to me and it just keeps going on, I might put them in the freezer and freeze them out of my life. And if that doesn't work, which usually it does,
Right.
but if writing their name on a paper and putting it in the freezer does not freeze them out of my life and they're still coming through, I might then
Yep.
do more of a mirror type reflection spell to send what they're doing to me back to them, you know.
Right.
And I mean, that just,
Mhm.
to me, that reminds me of being a little kid when somebody would be mean to me and I'd be like, oh, I'm rubber, you're glue, what you say doesn't So, I mean,
I mean, I think that's the
yes,
first
that
spell we
is
ever
a
learned.
hex. So,
Isn't it? Yep.
like we were all doing magic as little kids.
Right.
Know it,
We
but
were.
yeah. So, but every time I think of a mirror spell and reflecting it back, that's what goes through my head. And I'll be honest, I actually use that sometimes as the word.
Hey, it's perfect. I mean, it's
It really
exactly
is.
what we want to happen.
That, and that's just like, birthday candles and making a wish and blowing out the candle and everything. That's magic we were all doing as kids, whether we knew it or not. But yeah, I mean, that's generally what I do. And usually that's as far as I have to take it. But if it has to go beyond that, I'm not opposed to taking it beyond that. But I'm certainly not going to do the Pulsa Denura death curse either on somebody. But that's my choice. Somebody else, like I said, might choose differently.
Right.
Yeah, I think intent matters too, and whether it's just trying to get these people to leave you alone, or to stop their influence, or whether it's vengeance. I mean, vengeance is different from, you know, remove your influence from me and from the people that I love and stuff like that. And then when you cross the line into vengeance, I'm going to make you pay because you did this.
Right.
I think that kind of crosses the line into baneful magic.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, people make their own choices and they do what they want to do. But for me, that's where it crosses the line, when I'm just trying to get back at somebody.
Yeah. You have to be doing something to me or to something I believe in for me to go to the point of doing a hex of some kind. I'm not going to do it just because I don't like you or because I think you're a bad person or whatever. You have to actively be doing something against me
Right. Right.
or those I love and care about.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it because if somebody's just getting on my nerves and I just cannot stomach them being around, then like you said, put them in the freezer and just remove them from your life and let them go on about their business or whatever. But, I'm not going to start hexing people because they stole my parking place, or
Right.
I might jinx them because they stole my parking place.
Yeah, that's a little trickster energy going on. That's not like,
Yeah. Like if they come back and they have a little ding in their car or something like that, that wouldn't be so
some bird poop on the
what
windshield.
goes around
bad.
comes
Exactly.
around. So, maybe next
Exactly.
time you won't be a butthole.
Right.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think we're all on the same page there with all of that. And does anybody have anything else they want to say that's just a burning in your heart to get out about baneful magic? And I mean, all the notes I had, we've talked about with the love and light, toxic positivity stuff, and like we all have to make our own decisions. There's a price to pay. We've talked about everything I had.
Yeah, I think I would just say, when you're talking about baneful magic and you're talking about jinxes and hexes and curses and trying to create changes that you want to change, just be careful not to become the people that you're fighting against.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, then I guess that about wraps us up. I do have some links that I'm going to put in the show notes that talks about the Jewish death curse that I mentioned, just because it's interesting to read about, even though I would never do it. And also about the Pennsylvania Dutch and hexing and that kind of thing that I just think is interesting that people might like. So look for that in the show notes if either of those spark any interest for you. I'll have those. But other than that, I think that's about wrapping us up for this time, and we'll be back again in approximately 2 weeks for another episode.
Okay.
Thank you guys for being with me and talking about this heavy topic.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Peace.